the product itself doesn't really matter. We've done this in all sorts of different industries. This works for. It's just more a matter of identifying that true customer and making sure that you have a product that is actually saleable. Nobody wants to be sold. They always want to buy. And if you can create an environment to give them the opportunity to buy, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so that's the whole goal with the actual event. There's nothing more powerful, I think, for an entrepreneur to be able to just go do it. And when you're at the point where it's like do or die, that's the only point when your why is strong enough where it's like that the only way you can continue to breathe is to make this successful. You figure it out. You just when you're pressed to that level, you figure it out.
And that's next on Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. So the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder. That is the question. And this podcast will give you the answers. Hey listeners and viewers, we have created a tremendous community of bootstrappers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ambitious, resourceful, and want to get things done. We brainstorm, support, and help each other out. Come join us. Navigate to bootstrapping.group. That is bootstrapping.group. If you like this video, do not forget to hit that like button now. Or if you want us to improve our content, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button and give us your feedback in the comment section below. Here at Tetranoodle, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you insightful and engaging interviews, tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your business or rise in your corporate profession. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And do not forget to hit that bell icon so that you are notified when we publish new content. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be talking with Rylee Meek. So Rylee is the founder and CEO of Social Dynamic Selling System. Starting off as a teenager in a rural town, Rylee went on to work in several different industries through the years until he founded this thriving company, which has generated over $80 million in the past 8 years. That's amazing. His mission is to teach business owners how they too can obtain predictable, sustainable, and scalable income primarily through dinner seminar marketing. Oh, that's a new term I have come across. So we'll talk about that later for sure. So welcome, Rylee. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. You have a great story. So tell us how it began. Maybe take us through the memory lane and how this all started.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Really all started, I grew up in South Dakota, small town, South Dakota. I think my graduating class was like 45 kids. So the whole town itself was less than 1,000 people. So I think my entrepreneurship kind of journey began back then. At a young age, at the age of 15, I took my first job. Not really because my parents asked me to or anything, but I just felt like I wanted to be able to provide and, getting my driver's license and, have the cool car, things like that. So I took a job actually making pizza at the local gas station, hot stuff pizza. And the hourly rate was $5.15 an hour. Awesome. So I worked my first 8-hour shift, and I did the math in my head, and I thought there's no chance that I'm doing that again. So my first day was also my last day. I see. And that pretty much began my kind of entrepreneurial journey. My family was big into a number of different like network marketing companies. So I was involved with a lot of like personal development meetings and just was surrounded by like-minded people, entrepreneurial type people, and I think that really helped me by being surrounded by those type of people. I think that really helped kind of cultivate who I am as a person. And the day I graduated high school, this would have been back in 2003. literally the day I graduated, I drove up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is where I reside now. And it wasn't really to, go to the big city or anything. It was just more about being able to, I love South Dakota. It's great, but it was more about just being able to get out of there and explore my options. And I was initially planning on going to school to become a chiropractor. But during that time, I started making a decent amount of money just in sales. I was retailing nutritional supplements, again, being part of kind of a network marketing company. That was my first taste of actually putting together like a actual marketing campaign. And I came up with a catchy little phrase that allowed my phone to just ring off the hook. And I started retailing a number of products, over 10 grand a month in just nutritional supplements. And that was my first taste. At the age of 19, I bought my first BMW, and, I thought I was really something. But during that time period, I had a number of different opportunities and really sales opportunities. And I always sold kind of one-on-one. And it was great because, I felt like I could create my own type of income based upon how much I wanted to work. But ultimately, I realized I was still kind of somewhat capped by the amount of time or hours in a day that it was, if I wanted to make money, I had to work. And if I didn't work, I didn't make money, so it was one of those things where I appreciated it, but I also knew the limitations. And when I was 23, I had just come back from Mexico. I had moved down there for like 5 months for a business opportunity. And I came back from Mexico, and it was ultimately a failed opportunity. And I had the tail between my legs, and I was looking for my next, what was I going to do next? And just after months of just kind of searching out different, seeking out different opportunities, I came across this ad on Craigslist of all places. And I remember clearly the ad said, work 3 days a week and make $10,000. And I thought, well, yeah, right. But the spirit inside me, I just had to inquire. And so I ultimately had numerous conversations with this gentleman, and he was telling me about, how they do these seminars, and they would speak to groups of people. And it sounded interesting. It was, it was a totally new concept to me. But after a couple of weeks of kind of, going back and forth with him, he said, you know what, I've got an event about an hour and a half from you. Why don't you come on down and check it out? And I did. And I went down there. I showed up, pretty much right when he was getting ready to start his presentation. And I walked in, and I realized there was like 20, 25 people sitting in this room, just eager to hear what he had to say. And that was my first kind of introduction to this model of, more so selling one to many versus selling one-on-one. And it completely blew my mind. I thought, holy cow, he did, he spoke for like 40, 45 minutes. Fed them dinner, and then ultimately at the end, he asked for a follow-up, like an appointment to actually sit down with him one-on-one. And I couldn't believe it. He had like 7 or 8 appointments of people that wanted his what he was selling at the time. And I left there. I drove back home, and I couldn't sleep. I was like, this is unbelievable. Could this really be? Is this real? Is this like something that I could utilize? And what I ended up doing ultimately within a few months after that, I ended up starting my own company, really taking his idea and took a couple of his different products and added a few of mine. And that was my first kind of taste of what is now known as the social dynamic selling system, which is really dinner seminar marketing. And my first 6 months, we did our first seminars in July of, I think it would have been 2010. Our first 6 months, we did 2.1 million in sales. Wow. Not knowing what the heck I was doing. I had zero money at the time. I had pretty much invested all of my money in my failed business opportunity. And I remember, driving to my very first seminar that we did direct mail for. We filled the room, and it was literally like make or break for me. I had $673 in my bank account. And it was like, I got to make this thing happen. And thankfully it worked, surprisingly. And so through just kind of continual trial and error, that following year I started to add more sales reps. So by the end of that next year, we did a little over 12 million in sales. We did the same thing in the following year. I had now kind of moved more so, rather than me doing the presentations myself, I had started, training and coaching other sales reps. And by the end of that second year, we had 26 sales crews in 38 states throughout the country. And it was a fun time. It was a very, very fun time in my life. And I started to, I realized we'd kind of developed a system here, one that, it was really a well-oiled machine, not necessarily reliant upon my own, individual efforts. Because the beautiful thing about it was how I had mentioned before, my income was somewhat capped by the amount of time in the day. We were able to really capitalize on that by doing, 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 rock star presentations on a weekly basis. And then ultimately only meeting with those that cared enough or wanted to know enough about what we do, or was looking to get pricing on it, or whatever the product was that we were selling. And so it allowed us to leverage not only our income, but really our time by, a lot of people call it, an online funnel system is kind of a buzz today, but I realized we kind of created our offline system where we were just continually sifting the sand, and then ultimately only meeting with those that wanted to know more about what we were selling. So that, it was kind of like I said, a real fun journey during that time period. But as we looked at selling different other products or other services, that was, my next thing. I had zero passion for what I was selling. And I was like, okay, what else could I sell here? And it was more about me trying to find something to sell, one that I wasn't passionate about at all. And I remember it clearly a few years ago, I ended my sales week. It was a Wednesday. I came home from a pretty successful sales week again. And my wife and daughter were already sleeping, and I sat down at my kitchen table and I just felt like, just kind of unfulfilled. And again, I was making great money. It wasn't anything in that aspect of it. But, once you make enough money, you quickly realize it's not all about the money, and it's, if you never have enough of it, it's always about the money. But once you've kind of obtained that, you realize there's a lot more to life than just, always hustling. Yeah. And I thought, like, what else, what could I do? And I always knew my passion was people and being able to pour into them and help them and coach them. And I was doing that with my sales reps, but it wasn't like the end game of it just wasn't really fulfilling for me. And that's when I had the real aha moment of man, what if the product itself wasn't, something that we could sell, but what if the product was our system? And I remember thinking back to my very first, starting out in all the other sales gigs and things that I had, like the continual struggle of, constantly trying to find the next lead or find the next sale. And just the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the feast and famine really of a salesman, or even as a business owner. And I thought, man, there's plenty of business owners out there, entrepreneurs that have a passion for their product and, want to sell it, but they just don't have the means, or they don't know how to go about doing it. And I thought, man, if we were the product and we could teach people how to actually sell their product, something they're passionate about, this could really be a win-win. And so I just started to write that night, and I mean, for hours, I just started to write and think about everything that we had created over the last, 4 or 5 years of, how do we target our demographic? Who's our ideal customer? How do we make our message clear, in our invitation? How do we deliver presentations? How do we set up our room? How do we negotiate with restaurants? All of that, I just started to write and put it down, pen to paper essentially, and which was ultimately the beginning of what we've now created as the social dynamic selling system. And that was really kind of the transfer, or what do I want to say? Just that's when we started to more so move into consulting and teaching people versus actually selling our own products, our own services. So awesome. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, very. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I've been talking to so many entrepreneurs and other people who have done really well. No one has actually brought up that their business started from a Craigslist ad. So you are the first one, and perfect. Restoring some credibility to that site.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about this system. I have not heard of this, but it sounds like a very intriguing proposition. So can you share with us, how does this work? Like dinner, seminars, how does this all work?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not like it's not necessarily anything new. If you may have even been invited from, a lot of financial advisors or attorneys will do these workshops, or, they'll invite you for a free steak dinner to teach you how to, save wisely, or, grow your wealth or whatever. And so I'd known about it beforehand. But what wasn't done at that time was really only in the financial services kind of arena. And so what we've been able to do is do it within multiple different verticals or industries. And so, at the core of what it is we create a proper invitation, with the proper messaging to ultimately get people to pick up the phone and RSVP for the local event that we have going on in the area. And it'd be come learn about one of my very first companies. We taught homeowners how to save money on their utility bills, and it was little things like insulating the attic, putting LED lights in, just like these little things. So we would create the message like, come learn how to save money on your utility bills, and we're going to invite you out for a free steak dinner. And then ultimately we developed a presentation to deliver. And then at the end of it, we would simply ask for that appointment or the second step to do like the in-home analysis, and then, ask for the sale. And so at the core of it, like I said before, it's really an offline funnel system where we target the specific demographic. Like, whenever we onboard a new client, we're going to identify who your true client avatar is. Like, who is your ideal customer? Is it, 5'8", blonde hair, blue eyes, middle-aged men, whatever that is, we can target that demographic, and then we can hone in on actually creating the proper message to get them to take action, to actually come to the event. And then through proper, training and things, we can help deliver the presentation, or, help build that PowerPoint or whatever it is that we're looking to build. And then coach our clients all the way through the process of actually closing the sale.
Wow,
so, and
that's great.
Go ahead.
Right, good. No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and it's the product itself doesn't really matter. We've done this in, the home remodeling industry, like I just mentioned. We've done this for doctors, for dentists, the cosmetic side of things. We've done this for investment clubs, travel, all sorts of different industries this works for. It's just more a matter of identifying that true customer and making sure that you have a product that is actually, saleable.
Yeah, that's great. So actually, that is what I was going to talk about. The product. What kind of product? Like, if somebody wants to do something like this, I'm imagining the product needs to be fairly high value, because you need to take into account the cost of hosting somebody, dinner and all that. So what is that sweet spot of the pricing of the product for this type of strategy?
Yeah. Great question. That is an important thing. And that's why anytime we onboard a new client or potential client, we always start out with a strategy call, just because we don't want to set anybody up for failure. And as you had mentioned, this isn't a cheap thing. You're not just buying like pay-per-clicks or things along those lines. If you're selling a $48 widget and you have no additional lifetime value of that customer or upsells or anything like that, I would be the first to tell you not to go this route, just because you'll never recoup or you'll never have an actual return on your investment. So what we found is if you have at least $1,000 or maybe even a $1,500 profit margin on your product, or the lifetime value of that actual customer, we can make it work. Obviously, the higher the margin, the less sales that you need to actually make it work. But it does. This isn't a few $100s. This is thousands, a few $1,000s that it takes to put on one of these events. Nice. But if you have the proper margins to make that happen, we can ultimately create a presentation to create sense of urgency and get those customers or those buyers to make that buying decision.
That's great. And what about actually filling up the room? How do you market this? Like, let's say we have a product and we want to host this event. What is your strategy to fill up the room and have these people, sort of targeted people, come to the event?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we always want to start with the end in mind. And that really is, okay, what are we actually selling? And it's not even necessarily the product that you're selling. We have to, when we're creating the message or the model of our whole system, we want to, identify what are you truly selling. And most salesmen or any business owner, entrepreneur, oftentimes hear, like, you don't buy a drill because you want a drill. You buy a drill because you want the hole. Yeah. But we even go further than that. It's like, you don't just buy it because you want the hole. You want the hole so you can hang the picture, so people can feel comfortable in your home and things like that. So it's more so identifying the benefits of the benefits and being able to speak to people, even subconsciously, just being able to get them to emotionally attach to what it is that you're actually truly selling. And that's how we'll build the actual invitation, and the messaging that we use on that needs to stay consistent all the way through the process. And I oftentimes refer to this as what we do to get people to come to our events is we fish with corn dogs. And what I mean by that is, if you were to go fishing and you put a corn dog on your hook and you throw it in the water, a fish will bite that every single time. But there's not a fish in nature that can sustain its life long term on corn dogs. Okay, it's just not possible for them to do that. But they will bite it every single time. And so, all we're trying to do is get them to show up to the event, and then your job is to sustain them and ultimately make the sale. So our corn dog is the free steak dinner or chicken dinner or fish dinner or whatever it is that we're inviting them out to, because that's the premium, or that's what they're actually coming out, because they're getting fed a nice meal. And by the way, you also are going to teach them something that our process is all about know, like, and trust. And we're never selling from the front of the room. Obviously that's the goal, but what we're doing is we're really getting them to know, like, and trust you as that authoritative figure in that specific industry or niche that you're in. Because people, nobody wants to be sold. They always want to buy. And if you can create an environment to give them the opportunity to buy, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so that's the whole goal with the actual event. Because once you gain their trust, they'll ask you to sit down one-on-one, and from there you can actually then sell your product or service.
I see. Now, what about actual targeting? Let's say, you were inviting 20 people. How do you make sure that you call the right people? Because, if somebody offered me free meal, probably, depending on how busy I am, I'll go. But it may not be related to what I'm really interested in. So how do you ensure that this is highly targeted?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I kind of go back to starting with the end in mind. Let's first off figure out your client avatar. Who is your true ideal client? And some people know that to a T. And if you don't, it's an exercise that we take our clients through in really identifying who are we looking for? Because there's data out there. We can buy that data. If it is, like I said, 5'8", blonde hair, blue eyed dudes that, only ride Harleys or whatever. We can get very specific with the data and the list that we have. And then it's obviously crafting that message to direct it specifically to them. And we do millions of pieces of direct mail every year. So that's primarily the sole source that we use from actually filling our events, which a lot of people think is kind of an archaic model, but I've tried every single form of marketing to get people to come to events, and I've never had a higher return on our actual investment than direct mail.
I see. That's great. And so actually that is what I was going to ask next. How about the online digital marketing world? Like, do you incorporate that into this mix or not at all?
We have, and it really depends on the product that we're selling. Again, we want to know, what are we truly selling, and what forms of marketing did they respond to? If we're trying to target millennials, then we may move more towards an online version or something like that. But still the highest return on investment that we do in any form of our marketing is absolutely direct mail. And it's an easily measurable form for us. If I send 5,000 pieces and I get 50 calls, it's a very trackable thing for us to do or to measure as we kind of go through our actual system. Because everything we do we have 6 measurables that we track with every single campaign. And one of them is simply the response rate that we get from our initial invitation.
Got it. And what about, there's a lot of talk about webinars and, doing everything digitally. Basically, this whole exercise of doing a presentation, as you put it, it's establishing that trust factor, and, people get to know you, talk about the subject matter as an expert. So how do you compare this with the webinar model where people are selling things, presenting themselves as experts in an online forum?
Yeah, it's apples and oranges really, because if depending upon the product again or the service that you're selling, it seems like part of the reason that we created, part of the reason I named this the social dynamic selling system. It's kind of funny, because I love it because everybody kind of questions what social, like, you talking social media or what is it? What are you talking about? And with everything that we do, there's always a social dynamic going on. And, whenever there's a group of people together, there's that social dynamic that you can use to your advantage from a sales standpoint. We're doing this right now via, Zoom here. So it's like we can see each other, but there's a social dynamic, but there's something to be said about sitting down face to face with somebody, shaking somebody's hand, and which I think is a lost art now, because everything has moved online. And I think there is a hunger out there for people to really just get back to the good old, shaking a hand and being able to do business in, face to face. And so one of the reasons that I love live events versus just online is that aspect, is that I can create that social dynamic and use it to my advantage. Whether there's always that dynamic going on, whether you're, you're out at a local restaurant having dinner and you're hearing other people talk, you've got the server, there's a social dynamic happening there, and the energy in that room can be, high or low. And when you're actually hosting the actual event, you can control all of that and use it to your advantage. Hence the social dynamic selling system.
Yeah, that's good. Now, what about controlling yourself as a presenter? Because, a lot of people, they're really good at what they do. They're passionate about the product or the service they're selling, but they may not be, a very good presenter, especially on stage in front of other people.
Sure.
Speaking is one of the biggest fears, even more fearful than death for some people. So how do you tackle that?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, it is definitely a learned art. It's not like I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, and speech class was like literally I wanted to, skip school that day, because I would stand up in front of the room with my note cards and I would just tremble in my voice. If Mr. Fonder, my speech teacher, saw me now, he would probably be blown away, because this is definitely a learned art that we've had to fix and perfect over the last few years. So for somebody that is super nervous about speaking to groups, it is something that we can help with and teach people and coach people down the right path. And for some business owners that we work with, it's like, this is I love it, I get the system, I'm just not going to do it. Will you train other sales reps for us to do it? We can do that as well. We can, hire and train for companies as well to develop their own sales team on how to speak to actual groups.
Okay. And let me ask you this question that is, coming up in my mind. What is the significance of a dinner? Can it be a lunch? Can it be like a coffee? Or
it can, and I've done them all: breakfast, coffees, hors d'oeuvres, just wine tastings. But I think I think there's a higher value that's held to a dinner. For one, it is dependent upon who are we targeting. Is it the working mom and dad that where dinner is like the only time of day that they're actually come together? If we're targeting, 80-year-old men, maybe, breakfast coffee in the morning might be a good route to go, but so that is really dependent upon, again, the product or really the target that we're trying to hit. But also I just think there's something special about breaking bread with people and them coming out and we're sitting down, we have a nice meal together. They're listening to, what I have to say, and you're being established as that authoritative figure. In addition, there's always, even if it's subconsciously, there's always that law of reciprocity. Like, I just bought you dinner, now in return, give me an appointment time. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well, and why the system works so well for us, in focusing solely on dinners.
That's great. How scalable is it? So if it's a solopreneur, they don't have a sales team or anything like that. So is this a scalable system that can sustain their whole business?
Yeah. And that's kind of part of our tagline, having, predictability, sustainability, and then scalability with it. Because the beautiful thing about what we do from a marketing standpoint, I often refer to us as we're hunters. I think there's two versions of marketing. There's farmers and there's hunters. And farmers are, they're the ones buying the billboards or, running TV ads or things like that, where they're just continually, they're planting crops, and then ultimately at some point they're hoping for the harvest. And it's more of a passive way, to get people to pick up the phone and take action. Where what we do is we sit down, we figure out, okay, what are you truly actually selling? Okay, let's create a invitation that speaks to that. And we buy our list, our data, and I could pick any city in, here in the US here or even Canada, but we could pick any city and we can send our invitation in that city. I can literally fly in, do my presentation, be established as that authoritative figure, and then ultimately make this sale with zero brand recognition of any sort. And so when I say a hunter, we go out, we hunt, we find our prey, we shoot it, we kill it, we eat it, and then we can move on to the next area and go hunting every single week. And so a prime example, we just worked with a solar company in Florida, which is, had a great brand awareness down there. But they were looking to scale a little bit further up north into the Northeast, but they didn't have any clients. They didn't know, how to go about, generating leads. Did they just buy cold leads or go door to door, or what do they do? And what we did is we just picked a town, a restaurant. We sent the invitations. We built their presentation. They were able to fly in, and immediately their first week have 7 new customers. That then allows them to have money to brand and build that area. So if there's anything that this system does, probably what this system does the best is allow you to scale into other markets without having to set up that, a true brick and mortar foundation before actually going to market.
That's great. Now, the title of the show is Bootstrapping Your Dreams. So we advocate bootstrapping businesses here. Did you bootstrap your business as well, or you had other investors?
No, yeah. Like I said, this was me and a credit card. I had $673 in my bank account, and I believed enough in the system that if I could get a group of people together, I could, make a large enough profit to then pay for my next week's marketing, and then pay for my next week's marketing. And that's literally what happened. That first 6 months, like I said, it was a belief in what I had, and getting people to take action, and what allowed us to generate that 2.1 million over that first 6 months, which then in turn allowed us to scale and open up other markets. We continually reinvested into the company to make sure that we continually grew.
Great. And what are the benefits of bootstrapping versus going with investors or raising money initially? Can you share some of your experiences about bootstrapping in particular?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's nothing more powerful, I think, for an entrepreneur to be able to just go do it. I mean, and when you're at the point where it's like do or die, that's the only point when your why is strong enough where it's like that, the only way you can continue to breathe is to make this successful. You figure it out. You just, when you're pressed to that level, you figure it out. There's always a way when you don't have any other options. And I think that is just, why I love working with younger, not necessarily younger, but in age, but just early entrepreneurs that have a vision and have that burning desire to just figure it out. I mean, there's nothing that can stop them. And so that's why I love your show here.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and making us aware about this unique selling system. Now, before I let you go, can you share how people can reach out and if they wanna incorporate this marketing strategy into their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to get more information on what I do or what we do is our website is socialdynamicselling.com. So again, socialdynamicselling.com. I put together, there's like a journey map that you can download on there. I put together kind of different modules that we break this into kind of a step-by-step training system to teach people how to do it. You don't have to hire us to do it. I put together even a book. It's on Amazon bestseller now, actually, called Food for Thought. And that can be purchased on Amazon, or it's even a Kindle version, I guess. But that walks people through the process as well. And then if there's any questions, they can always just schedule a strategy call on the website itself, and you'll get myself or someone from our team that'll maybe give some words of wisdom, or at least an idea if this model would work for what they're trying to do.
That's great. Thank you so much for being with us today, and once again sharing your knowledge about this whole new world of marketing strategies.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And that's all for now. Until next time. And if you are an existing or an aspiring tech entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to bootstraptechstartup.com and sign up for free. I want to make sure that more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to bootstraptechstartup.com, and I look forward to helping you with your tech projects. If you want more engaging videos and insightful interviews with industry's thought leaders, then check out other videos we have picked for you. The link is right there. And if you want to be notified about our new content, please do consider subscribing to our channel.